This government meeting is brought to you by Eastworks and our local cable subscribers.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the property committee meeting for April 29th. We have, before we get into anything else, we have minutes to approve.
We do.
So thank you very much for those. I'd entertain a motion to approve the minutes of April 22nd.
So moved.
I second the motion. My motion second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Okay. So I think since the last time we met, just a quick of the last meeting, we had a good deal of public speak. We deliberated a bit. And I think what we settled on was that we were going to, Councillor Conniff was going to take a first shot at, yes, well, just for context, we can't really meet outside of these committee meetings to talk about stuff because there's only 3 of us. So 2 of us would be a quorum. So we'd kind of be fixing the vote just with Massachusetts open meeting law. So when it comes to these things, we kind of have to hand them to one person and then hope for the best. And then we report back and we can discuss the results of that in open meeting, which is what we're doing right now.
Can I just read this?
Yeah. So why don't you go ahead and talk about just what you've done in the meantime?
So over the last 5 days or so, I've met with city attorney, the mayor, the chair of the pond committee briefly. I think that's it. And just random other people to try to get a sense for where we should take this. And based on what the attorney said, and I might as well just read you what I sent these 2 gentlemen earlier today because it kind of covers everything. So, to Councilors Peak and Kwasinski, it is apparent to me that no thorough review and resolution to the issue of whether or not to fly the U.S. flag over Neshonoc Pond can be completed in the limited time frame requested before. Excuse me? Oh.
Everybody here?
Limited time.
No comments.
Yeah, can you hear me? Okay.
You say no.
Which I believe is 5/30/2025 is when the flag would go up, I guess. I don't know, around there, give or take. In addition, we will be in receipt of the FY26 budget from the mayor in the next couple of days, and I expect rightly so that it will take up most of our time and energy for the next 6 weeks. In the past several days, I reached out to the city attorney, the mayor, who is open to allowing the flag to be flown over the pond in 2025, pending resolution of the issues identified by Attorney Tanner, who is the city attorney. This agreement that we talked about between the mayor and myself and the attorney and I is based on the fact that we had a committee member, the chair of this committee, had to leave earlier in the year, and then we had a replacement. So we lost a few months of the year to get this thing going. The issues surrounding the flying of the flag over the pond, as defined by the city attorney, are as follows, and a lot of these we talked about last week. The flag is currently installed on city property and overseen by private citizens of Easthampton. The flag is attached to municipal property via a wire that extends over municipal property and ends on private property. Mark Tanner, the city attorney, says the city would have to grant those individuals, the private property owners, some limited property rights to do this via granting a temporary license to use the city property. In addition, the private property owner will be required to have insurance and agree to indemnify the city on account of its use of the city property. Allowing private parties to fly a flag on municipal property may open the city to having additional displays of other flags on city property. But I think we talked last week, this would be mitigated through the policy of the mayor dated June 2022. The flag over the pond does not meet flag code according to U.S. Code Title IV, Chapter 1. While this is a law, there is no enforcement mechanism defined. So Section 6A, it's illuminating it. I'll just cut to the chase. The flag should never touch anything beneath it, such as ground, floor, water, or merchandise. Section 8, the flag should never be fastened, displayed, used, or stored in such a way or manner as to permit it to be easily torn, soiled, or damaged in that way. Okay. Now, speaking for myself, I do not view the flag over the pond as the appropriate tribute to 9/11. While at the time it may have provided a certain level of comfort and patriotism, the times have certainly changed, and the flag over the pond may not be viewed in the same way for everyone. Indeed, many of us had no idea that 9/11 was the reason the flag was raised in the first place. While the flag being raised over the pond may have started out to reflect the events of 9/11, it has flown for an inordinately long span of the calendar year, up to 6 months, I think, well before and well after September 11th. As I was tasked with creating language from which this committee can deliberate, below I offer some options. Number one, I suggest and encourage the immediate formation of a 9/11 25th Anniversary Memorial Committee. The 25th anniversary of 9/11 is next year. The formation of this committee could be established by the mayor, with committee participants being approved by City Council, as with other city committees. This committee could begin the process of designing a suitable memorial, perhaps along the boardwalk or some other place in the city, that might allow for a peaceful, contemplative space befitting the tone and tenor of the events of 9/11/2001. As for the flying of the flag, the only options I see right now are prohibit it and any other flag from going over Nash Pond, or mitigating all those other issues. So allow the raising of the flag over the pond to be temporarily granted to Nashawanek Pond Committee, subject to their agreement. And that the owner of the private land where one end of the wire is tethered apply for a license for limited property rights to do so. And that the owner of the private land where one end of the wire is tethered and upon which the flag sits, obtain a satisfactory insurance and agree to indemnify the city on account of its use of the city property. And that this recommendation will only be effect through 11/11/2025. There is no guarantee in representation that this temporary agreement will continue beyond those dates. And limit the time the flag can be displayed over the pond to align more closely with the 9/11 anniversary and be restricted to weeks rather than months, suggesting the flag be flown from 9/11 through 11/11/25. The flag, once taken down, will not be rehung over the pond after 11/11/25 until City Council can create and codify in law the appropriate ordinance or process. And this is the framework by which this body can now deliberate.
Okay. Thanks for all your work on this. I have some thoughts, but before that, I'll defer to my colleague.
I appreciate all the work and effort and talking to people. So thank you.
You're welcome.
There were a couple of things in the letter which we just received today that I wanted to address. The question is whether or not this may open the city to any flag flying over. I think if the council restricts its approval for the display of the United States flag, that be limited to the United States flag. And that in saying so, that is the national flag. There was a case in Boston that had to do, I believe, the Sirtliff case, which had to do in 2022, which had to do with a religious organization, the Catholic Church, asking to request a flag to be flown at City Hall in Boston. And that raised issues which the Supreme Court dealt with. But that was a private organization flying a private flag, not a private organization flying a United States of America flag. So I think there would be no question whether this would run afoul of Sirtliff. I think we're in good standing there. It would be like flying any United States flag on any pole, anywhere of municipal property in the city or on municipal/private property. Therefore, I was going to put forward a suggestion of an ordinance, and I'll read the language to you, and it's very simple. It amends our ordinances, chapter 8. Says Article 7, Nashawanek Pond. The flag of the United States of America shall be displayed at midpoint above Nashawanek Pond, approximately 200 yards from the boardwalk from Memorial Day through Veterans Day.
Okay, thanks for that. those are both really interesting. I have some thoughts on both of these. So I guess the first, I have a series of questions, so sorry if I hog some time here. My first few questions are for Councilor Coniff. And the first one is, did you get the sense in your discussions with the mayor that as long as we could find a resolution to the items that the solicitor laid out, that she would effectively by executive order allow this for this year?
Yeah, yes, if we did all those things and the private owner got insurance and got a license with the city to use their property for 2025, yes, she would allow.
Okay, and then, so I heard stuff about insurance liability. That makes sense. It's not fun, but it's something that, government bodies need to worry about, so we can figure that out. Unfortunately, one of the volunteers is an insurance guy, so maybe he can help with that a little bit. Not signing anyone up for anything, but he might have some insights on the matter. The second point was about, just like applying for something that seems easy enough. Flag code, I think that the folks had proposed some ideas about using some LEDs or something to illuminate it. If there was a practical solution and it worked and it met the legal requirements and didn't create some insane amount of light pollution, I'm fine with that. I have no problem with that. My one last point, there was a thing about sort of restricting the amount of time that it goes up. Was that from the solicitor?
Nope,
or
that was from me.
That's from you. Okay. Yeah. So that's okay. So that's something that we should discuss, but that is not.
It's a variable.
It's a variable, but it's not something that the solicitor thinks we need to solve. Okay. I appreciate that. In terms of a amendment to the ordinance like this one that's being discussed here, I think if I were to, so I guess then the question is like, it seems like we're just before we get into the details of this text, I think what Councilor Coniff is suggesting, just based on her conversations with our solicitor, who just for the public's benefit, that's the city lawyer, and with the mayor, like it seems that the direction that she's heading in is that the mayor would be amenable to allowing it and giving us effectively a year to figure this out. And Councilor Kwasniewski, it seems like what you're suggesting is that we propose an ordinance, this ordinance now.
For the pond,
I
for
want,
this year, for the United States flag.
I want to be
Not
clear.
all flags in the city, not all flag poles, not any other flagpole.
Right.
But only the Nashawanek pond.
Right. And I want to be really clear about this, that in order for this to happen, we need all those other things that I mentioned here to also, the mayor will not approve this if we don't do the licensing and the insurance and all.
Is there something legal that we need to do in
Yes.
terms of an ordinance
Oh.
that we need to pass in order to be able to grant a license to an organization?
A license to use city property is a process already in,
So
the
there's
city
nothing-
does that.
So there's nothing that we have to do.
No, but we have to articulate it in this ordinance that that is a requirement.
Why would you think that it has to be articulated in the ordinance?
Because
Why
this is
wouldn't
what
that
we're
be-
doing.
Why wouldn't that
One
be
at a
an
time.
executive responsibility to establish what the process is and to affect that process?
So we would have to ask the executive, the mayor. I'm saying that her agreement to do this is predicated on these other things happening. So if we have this ordinance, one of the lines in the ordinance should be that if the flag is tethered to a private property, the owner of that property has to get a license and also get an insurance policy that indemnifies the city. And if we don't, like, if whoever puts up the flag finds only public property to put this on, then no, that wouldn't apply. But I think we're talking about the current configuration.
The current configuration.
Can I jump in?
Please.
Okay, so then I guess what I'm trying to figure out, and I apologize to anyone watching if this is really inside baseball, but I want to get a resolution to this, and it kind of means we have to jump through these hoops. Is what the mayor saying that, okay, my understanding from the first part of your letter was that essentially the mayor was saying that she would allow this year by executive order in consideration for the fact that we are kind of coming up on a deadline here, and that doing this all in a sort of thoughtful and deliberative manner is going to get challenging. So then what I'm wondering is, what do we need to do? You're then saying that we need to take certain steps. And I guess I'm just trying to understand what those steps are.
So I guess the way I would envision this going is that the participants who are putting up the flag know who they are, I would presume. And that group would have to provide a valid insurance policy, proof of insurance.
Okay.
They would have to go through the licensing process in the city to
Right.
use city property.
Okay.
If those two boxes get checked,
Mhm.
then they may fly the flag, predicated on what we also decide, whether there's time bound, when they start, when they end, or we just leave it, carte blanche the way it's been, which is like 5 or 6 months, which I'm not in favor of personally, but that's beside the point.
Okay. So then there's an existing licensure process. The insurance process doesn't go through the council. So it's really, if we are okay with this, there's no legal action the council needs to make for that group to approach City Hall and say, here's our insurance, here's our application, and then the mayor approves it, right? Like, or is there something?
Yeah, we didn't walk through the process this week
Yep,
when I
okay.
talked to them, so things like that might need to be figured out. And I also don't know, and we would have to have the ordinance run past the solicitor
Sure.
about whether we need to articulate if the flag flies on non-city property. This is a very special case. This is like a
Yes.
one-off that expires on 11/11/25.
Right.
And then we have to come up with something else.
So then we're going to have to come up with a longer term policy, and it's going to have to include these factors plus potentially some additional factors.
Yeah,
Okay.
I mean, yeah.
I think we can take it to, if we can deliberate on this, obviously, and it'll be what it is. Guys, I'm sorry, can you try and just keep it down? It's distracting to have a lot of crosstalk in the audience. And there's, okay. Sorry, I just lost my train of thought. Okay, I think we've gotten to this point. We had a lot of public speak on this matter.
You do have public speak on the agenda.
I do then. Okay, so let's just jump
on the agenda.
Let's, all right, we've got a basic idea of where we are. Let's jump into public speak. And we'll do that, and then we'll hear everyone out, and we'll come back and react.
Before we do that,
Yeah.
I'd just like to question for Councilor Coniff, the licensing process. Can you explain what the licensing process is that you're talking about?
No, that there is so if you have an event and you want to hold it in, like, I don't know, City Hall parking lot.
Right.
You have to get a license from the city because you are going to use city property for a non-city event.
Right.
Same for this. They would have to do that. What that process entails, I've never done it, so I don't know, but I know it's an existing process.
Is it something that can be accomplished in a day, in a week?
I have no idea.
Will it take 2 months to accomplish?
Don't know.
I I can't imagine that it would.
No.
I would hope it wouldn't, because that would kibosh and everything. I would think that it was something that could be accomplished in a matter of a day or two. Or
Right,
three.
and I think depending upon what we come out of this with, if we come out of it with an agreement that those items will be articulated here, before we bring it to full council, we gotta get those answered. But this committee is just coming up with a recommendation.
I thought the committee was gonna come up with language for the to give to the council so
Right.
that this could be effective.
So that was what we talked about last time, and now Councilor Coniff is coming back and saying that after talking to the mayor, her preference is to have the mayor handle it this time around via executive order, and then we spend the remainder of the year working on a comprehensive resolution. And so that's different from what we talked about last time, but after the last week, that's the conclusion that she came to.
Yeah.
Is what I'm taking away from this.
I would agree, because I think for us to go through all of the, there may be better ideas that we're gonna find out when we go to the council, full council. There may be better ideas for the long run. This is a one-off. They need a license, they need insurance, boom, have at it.
And then they can just do that. It doesn't require anything of us.
Not as far as I understand it.
Okay.
Those are city processes, and the city would have to approve the insurance to make sure it's valid, and they would also have to work through the process of licensing.
Okay. So this
Yeah, I don't know what those
Yeah.
processes are.
this whole situation is obviously a little bit strange because there's a lot of people on the city side, there's the public, there's us. We're kind of playing telephone in between. It's not ideal, but it is where we are. So just to recap where we currently are. Councilor Coniff met with a number of officials from around the city. And what she's currently proposing is that the position of the mayor and the city lawyer is that if the volunteers who want to hang the flag want to go to her and apply for a license to hang the flag and then show insurance that she's okay signing on to allow the flag for this year, and then over the course of that year, we would set a permanent policy. So that's where we currently are. None of that actually necessarily requires a vote of this committee, but if anyone from the public would like to speak about this or weigh in, I just want to set a little parameter here. We're going to have a period of public speak time where anyone can come and say anything they want, and then we're going to close public speak and we're going to continue to deliberate. So that's just,
If I may.
yes.
I also want to just remind everyone that whatever is set up here, we can't react to it. We can't answer your questions. We can't. That's just the nature of public speak. You can tell us things, but we're just going to take it in.
It's not great, it's the law.
I've had a few questions, maybe someone in the audience had answers to them.
At that point, we'll,
Okay, ask the questions now, if you think that's appropriate, or.
let's go through public speak and then we can ask if there's outstanding questions.
I'm
We
thinking
can,
about if we have an insurance expert, I have just a couple of questions.
okay, yeah, so public speak. Anyone here wants to speak, please line up behind the podium. And then we'll take everyone in person, then we'll take everyone online, and that'll be public speak.
Good evening, Kathy Wazinski, Overlook Drive.
Your microphone on?
Let me try again.
Button.
Let's try that. Great. Kathy Wazinski, Overlook Drive. I wanted to come up and first thank you all for your efforts in trying to sort this out and make a request that we go forward with an ordinance for just the flag over the pond as you had originally planned. The mayor has made this into a political issue, and I do not trust that she will not just say, oops, it's not an ordinance, I don't think we should do it, and then we're at Memorial Day and the flag is down and or not up. I would rather see the city council, who is the mayor's boss, direct and put through an ordinance so that this flag can go up the way it should be. It should have never come down. This political mess that she's made, once again, is inexcusable. Thank you.
Hi, Paul Novak, Chairman of the Nashwauk Pond Steering Committee. This will be about as short as I'll ever be. Just to let you know that the Nashwauk Pond Steering Committee has agreed to take on the flag as basically ownership under their auspices. And we were hoping that being the case, the liability would fall underneath the city, with Nashwauk Pond being a city committee. So there isn't a whole lot more for me to say there, other than the fact that from a liability insurance standpoint, we were hopeful that might be a resolve in that direction. Again, Nashwauk Pond Steering Committee, very eager to take on this and utilize volunteers in the process. And I know you can't answer, but just wanted to state that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Robert LaFerrier for Prospect Street. I've read the ordinances of the city. I've read the stuff that the state has put out. I've read the national flag memos. The one thing I'm not understanding right now is the insurance for the pole that the other flag of the cable is tethered to on a private property. The insurance aspect of it is what part of what we actually insuring. We're talking a pole on a piece of ground. I've not seen where any kind of damage could be caused if anything happens to that. So the liability insurance to me doesn't make any sense. And also, I'm standing up here, so I will formally announce that I am running for mayor. Thank you.
My name is Mark Subak, 366 Main Street. I would recommend that the flag be continued to fly from Memorial Day to Veterans Day. We can, in my opinion, I mean, it's been up there for 23 years. I don't think it does. It was put up for 9/11, after 9/11, to honor that particular, the tragedy of that day and everything. But I think it has since come to mean much more than that. And from Memorial Day to Veterans Day, it's good summer months. We're not flying it in the wintertime where wind and rain and snow or whatever can cause major problems. But it's up there and partially to honor the veterans. You go to the library, and I don't know how many people know this, but when they decorate the monument around the library, there's 100 American flags flown on little stands. Each one of those flags represent a veteran from Easthampton who died in battle. And I don't see any reason why, if we make a little memorial, put it on a boardwalk or something for 9/11, I don't see any reason why the flag can't continue to fly from Memorial Day to Veterans Day, if nothing else, and just to honor veterans from Easthampton who have served. Thank you.
Kind of hope that someone else is going to take the floor.
Your turn, Boris.
Good evening, Forrest Dayville, the 144 Strong Street, Easthampton. Yeah, I'll second every comment that's been said so far this evening. Couple things. You mentioned that you can ask questions, you can make statements, we can, but we can't have any discourse between each other, and that's a state law. This seems ridiculously cumbersome if you want to develop any kind of a comprehensive program for anything. Can you suspend a meeting do a session of questions and answers. Because it's hard to keep seated when you'll say some things, but there's an answer, or maybe it's going to be helpful at least. And just add it to the rest of the knowledge that you have. But if it's, okay, this week you can speak, this week we can speak, but how do you make any forward progress? I don't know how you can. So my hat's off to anything that you guys can accomplish. The issue of insurance for the cable on the private property anchor. Well, who's covering the town side of it? I mean, we've already got the anchor on it. We've got insurance on it. So why wouldn't that cover the whole thing? Whatever the cost of having any other committee, a licensing to fly the flag number one. That's crazy. Get insurance for it. It would be so simple as just a rider on the cities. Like Mark said, been there for 25 years, or 24 years. What's the problem? It's, the umbrella policy that the town has would more than cover that. And why make residents, go through these steps just to fly a flag that is it's not a limited purpose for why it's there. It's not just for the 9/11. And I don't think everyone thinks that, that's a 9/11 memorial. No, that's a United States memorial. And as Mark said also, that's for all the veterans. And I just can't imagine anyone not taking great pride in flying a flag. And this is kind of a notable one that Easthampton is famous for. The other one that is mind-boggling is the question has come up about lighting the flag or how it's to be properly flown. And it's been answered last November, the earlier meeting that we had here, and now this week. There's not a law that says you shall fly the flag in this manner. There's a recommendation, but it's not required to be lit. There's no requirement. And why we would have to, it sounds like, in order for the mayor to say yes, the flag has to be illuminated, has to be everything that she thinks it should be. And it's insane. I mean, it's just a recommendation. That's federal. And if someone says otherwise, stand up and say, hey guys, that's not true. You're just making things more difficult than it has to be. I think the other one, as far as flying the flag, and maybe if you can make a policy or some sort of a statement that the mayor would say, okay, do it for this year, and then we've got a year to get this squared away. If the mayor is the one that said the flag is coming down and made it happen last year, she also can do it in reverse and say, fly it this year. There's no problem. And I can't imagine that being an issue. And thank you very much.
Patrick Bruff, 107 Brick Street. So I'll just say a couple things. I've always been in favor of it being flown the time frame that has been flown for the last 23 years. That's the first thing I'll say. The insurance piece, I don't know if it's as simple as we think it is. I would love to say, yep, no problem. I'll run over to my office and get a certificate of insurance for flying a flag. Like anything else, getting a certificate of insurance, it's got to be for something specific. So it may or may not be as simple as that, as getting it. I do think, or I would like to hope, that if another entity, sounds like the Pond Committee is willing to take over that, wherever Paul went, there he is, that they would become the entity that's legally responsible or liable for what's going on there, as far as making sure that the cables are anchored correctly, the flag is anchored correctly, and all of those things happen. So I know you can't answer me, but that's something that I think should be asked or put forward, because if, again, if a city entity is taking over this, as far as the liability piece is concerned, the city is back to being the one that's going to provide the insurance for it. I don't think there's any issue with anybody getting a, with them going and asking the mayor, getting the license and doing that whole process. I think that's something that the con committee is probably willing to do tomorrow if they had to. I am very cautious, or a little bit cautious about, I'm not saying I'm just more cautious that it's coming from you guys, and that we have something more in writing versus an email where we hear that the mayor is saying that she's okay with us moving forward with this so that we can continue to do it. So that's it.
Again, Paul Novak. This time, I'm an insurance agent, and for many years I insured the city of Easthampton's municipal insurance, the agency that I was with. And I can say that the liability exposures that are present within a municipality are a lot larger than a flag flying over the pond. I mean, you've got to deal with potholes, you've got to deal with all kinds of potential slip falls on sidewalks, and the insurance program that Easthampton had at the time that I was involved, there were no liability exclusions in the policy that would present a problem with if something were to go awry with the flag. There were no specific exclusions. I would probably pretty much dare to say there aren't any on the present program, but I just wanted to let you know that this is a very, very small exposure that is perhaps being inflated to a large exposure in comparison to the exposures that the city of Easthampton is faced with on a regular day-by-day basis. So just to let you know that, at least in my experience with municipal insurance, this is not a real big concern, because liability policies are put in place for specific, not specific liability, all liability unless specifically excluded. And that is not an exclusion on a policy that I worked with Easthampton at the time. I suspect it would be the same, but I just wanted to state that.
Anyone else in person want to say anything?
Good evening. Thank you for allowing us to speak. That flag was put up as a memorial, as we all know.
I'm sorry, could you quickly just say your name and address for the record?
Tammy Coet, East Street in East Hampton. The flag was put up right after 9/11. Our original mayor at the time, Mr. Towsing, okayed everything to go through. Never heard anything word about liability. Nobody ever had a problem with it. Now, after all these years, 23 years later, almost 24 years later, it's a problem. I don't see why. Our other mayor had everything, it should have been grandfathered in. This shouldn't even be up for discussion. This shouldn't even be part of any agenda other than to keep that flag flying. We are Americans. That is our flag. That is our symbol of freedom that our men and women have died for, so we can fly that very freely inside of this country. And us sitting here and discussing it like this is shameful. Very shameful. And this board should be very ashamed of themselves, along with our so-called mayor, who has not mentioned any of this, any meeting she's been to. And she's the one that caused all this. And now you have to deal with people like me who are very upset over this, which is not fair to you. But I wouldn't expect anything different from her. Now, that flag should be back up for Memorial Day. And people inside of this community will be very happy. If it's not, you're going to have people inside this community that are not. I will be one of them. My father was a Marine. I've had an uncle who was also inside the Navy. I've got my cousin who's inside the Navy. People love that flag. It's beautiful up there. It shows our patriotism. It shows who we are. We're united. You take it down, it takes that away. We have our soldiers pinned up all over town that served for this country. My father was one of them up there. Other people have people that are up there. And now you're gonna take away one of our main symbols? I think that's wrong. And if it comes to it, then let's have an election. Let the people inside of Easthampton decide whether or not they want that flag. Take it right out of that mayor's pocket, make her freaking pay for it. She's the one that's causing all this friction inside of this community. So if you guys can't decide the right way, let the people in Easthampton decide. It's our flag, it's our decision. And it should go right back up. And if you can't, then we're gonna push to have it go on a ballot. Thank you.
Anybody else have anything to want to say in public speak?
Yeah, Forrest Staples again. You're sitting there and because of the past, it's been running through my head like crazy, that we became notoriously famous for our school committee and finding a supervisor. Yeah, please don't let this turn in, well, it already has turned into one of those things. Why would we want to be known for making such a big deal out of flying the flag? You know, it just mind boggling. Thank you.
Anyone else? Anyone online? Raise your hand if you're online and you want to speak. Last call, anyone? Okay. All right. Let's get back to it. Counselors, where do we go from here?
I appreciate the comments and I appreciate the expertise and the insurance insight. I think was really interesting also. The Nashwauk Pond Committee saying that they're willing to take over responsibility and that resolving any potential liability issue, perhaps. Because the pond committee is a city organization. Might take that liability side away. The other question I think raised by the attorney was the license issue. But that's allowing a private group to utilize public property. Right?
No. The issue with
The license,
liability
right?
and, okay,
The-
do you want me to finish or what I was gonna say?
If you could answer the question, that'd be great.
I'm gonna try. So the liability is not related to the people who put it up. It's related to the property owner who is a private property owner against which the flag will be affixed. So it's that little piece of land with the pole that is the private property. That needs to have a license to use city property, which is the spanning of a wire across municipal property to the other side, which is also municipal property. And in order to mitigate, let's say that side of it falls down. I don't really know. I'm not really an insurance agent. I'm telling you what I was told by the lawyer. These questions might be more specific to the lawyer, but the issue revolves completely around that private land that is part of this configuration. It's just that. So where the pond committee is talking about, you know, that they're covered, as the people on that committee, they're covered. If they fell into the water, they're covered. But because the property is not their property or the city's property, the owner of the property has to get the license and the insurance, not the pond committee, not the city. It's not, it has to be the person who wants to use city property. This is not atypical of anybody who wants to use city property to get a license, and predicated on the fact that, you know, this is going over a pond, there's some liability issues.
I've had a few years in real estate, about 40 years. And the use of property is something I'm somewhat familiar with. if there's a license to be granted, to be granted to by the property owner to use the property for by somebody else. The city isn't asking the private owner to use the city's property. The Nashwauk Pond Committee would be making the arrangements with the private owner for permission to attach the clip to the whatever the attachment would be, and to use that clip attached to the pole on private property. So if anyone were to get a license, I would think it would be the granting of the license would be from the private property owner to the city, not from the city to the private property owner.
You'd have to talk to the lawyer about that. That's not the way.
I will do that.
Yeah.
So
Get that answer.
that would make it so that the same permissions that the cities had to attach it for the last, or whoever was raising the flag, had for the last 23 years could continue without further ado. There's nothing new.
It seems to me like we're kind of in an awkward situation here where, yeah,
We're trying to craft an ordinance.
we are trying to craft an ordinance, but we're also trying to resolve a short-term resolution to this problem. And what we're going on is Councilor Coniff meeting with the mayor and our city solicitor and getting these things, but to the extent that we have questions about those things, they're not here to answer them. We've also had a generous request from the pond committee to handle this. In theory, I really like that idea. There's some questions I have that would frankly go to the lawyer who is not here. And so I think that, I mean, I hate to drag this out, but I think that there's some questions that I really think we're actually pretty close to a short-term resolution that'll let us sit down and think about a long-term resolution to this. But there's some things here where I'm hearing you two talk, and I've heard some members of the public talk and say, well, you should be able to do this, or this should be fine, or this shouldn't be a big deal. And like, to me, that sounds pretty reasonable, but I'm unfortunately not the person you need to convince about that. And I'm just wondering if it might make sense for us to schedule a meeting with the mayor and with the solicitor and with some representatives of the pond committee to see if we can't.
Yeah, I'll send you the emails that the lawyers.
Uh-huh.
Maybe it will illuminate it more. Or not, I don't know.
Right.
I just didn't really think of doing that today.
Sure.
We're under the gun.
Yeah. Guys, I'm sorry, could you please try and be quiet while we're doing this whole
So
thing?
I think, yeah, I mean, I think I would prefer that we first meet with the lawyer so we can get his take on this. Then we can set up, to talk to the principal players who are going to be doing the installation of this.
So we could do it, I would think, if I may, do a working session. Say Monday, post it, not have public speak, not have, any other comments, but just work with the lawyer and answer these questions. We could ask the pond committee to attend that, if they were available. I'm trying to be creative here and get something where we can have a meeting and get all the questions answered.
Yeah.
And something drafted, because I frankly am of the opinion that an ordinance is appropriate for this time. To put it very crystal clear that this is what we want to do,
Yeah.
not to leave it in someone else's hands to make the decision. So if the pond committee were available, I would think that would be great. I happen to see a couple of members of the pond committee here. Would we ask them a question directly?
I suppose they're
Since they're
special
sitting-
municipal employees, so.
Yeah.
Like,
asking
Mandy,
the
do you want,
planning
can I
department
come up
would
and
be
ask
good?
you some questions as a,
So
I'm
Elaine
speaking,
Wood,
by the way, as a,
Overlook Drive, National Pond Committee.
We are meeting Monday at 5:45.
okay.
So, I mean, just letting you know. We're already meeting.
Yeah, so maybe we should talk about, can you? Yeah, okay, we should talk after this and see if maybe that
Okay,
makes
okay.
sense. But I think it makes, or maybe it makes sense for you guys to meet, discuss.
Or to have a joint meet, we,
We
Yeah.
could do a joint
Joint
meeting,
meeting,
yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
I'll stick
okay.
around after lunch.
Yeah, let's talk after. Yeah, I think we need to talk, and there's just, like, I mean, for what it's worth, like, it's like, from the sounds of it, like the folks who, the volunteers who've been hanging this flag, from the sounds of it, if you want to go to the mayor tomorrow and talk about this, you can, and you do not need our approval to do that. You don't need, there's no action that is pending from us in order to do that. So I might recommend that you do so, but at the same time, I think it would probably be good to get a meeting with us and the pond committee and the mayor and the city solicitor to see if we can actually come to some sort of understanding of how all these things play together, because I'm not an municipal insurance expert, and neither is anyone else here. And frankly, none of these objections or issues are coming from us. They're coming from, I mean, not to say that no one here agree, I'm not speaking for anyone else about what their opinions about these are, but the points here that are a barrier is on the executive side. And I think,
It's technically from the lawyer. He's counseling the mayor and he's counseling me.
yes.
So.
So we need
these
to
are
get with
his
the lawyer,
concerns.
and if the lawyer can feel good about an arrangement, then we can move forward with it. Is that
I-
where?
Sure.
Okay. Councilor Krasinski, any thoughts?
I think you're on target. You're moving this along. I would love to see the lawyer in the room at that time. It might cost us the legal time, but
It sure will.
it may
But
very well be worth it.
yeah, we're gonna need to,
move
because
To move this forward.
I'm done playing like telephone on this stuff. We need to get everyone in a space where they can, like, where we can actually discuss this with one another and come to a resolution, because that's the only way this is going to get resolved, in my opinion. Like I said, it's just to be 100% clear, right now, our understanding is that the folks who are hanging the flag can go ahead, contact the city, and that the mayor has indicated that there's a path to make something work, and you do not require anything from us. There's no vote you need. There's no approval you need. We don't have really, I mean, we could create an ordinance that would set a long-term guidelines, and that's something that we plan on doing. But right now, you could do that tomorrow. And I kind of advise you to. And in the meantime, I think we should talk with the pond committee and with the city solicitor and with the mayor and see if we can resolve some of the outstanding sort of legal and liability issues that we've discussed tonight that are just not something I'm an expert at all.
Yeah, I mean, I think that whoever is the owner of the private land, if they just went into City Hall and said, what are the two things I need to do to get the flag up? I'm sure Lindsay, who's on this call, would be more than happy to articulate what those are.
Yeah.
In terms of licensing and in terms of how to go about getting an insurance waiver, whatever it's called. I don't know what it's called.
Right. So I'd encourage you to just get the ball rolling on that. And just for whatever it's worth, the one thing I will say is just for this year, my recommendation is that we not put any restriction beyond what's already there on the time. And that's not because I don't get your point at all. It's simply because I'd rather not be on a deadline to make any decisions about that kind of stuff. I'd rather like be able to just,
Yeah.
I'd kind of just like to say, let's do status quo for now. And then any sort of changes that we need to do, we can deliberate and be thoughtful about and do sort of in time. That's my general attitude towards things, is that rush decisions are bad decisions. So if that's okay with everybody, then we can relay that to the city and, I don't know, maybe this whole thing is resolvable by tomorrow. It's not really actually something that we directly approve. So,
Yeah, I mean, that was my understanding, that as long as we satisfied the concerns of the lawyer,
Mhm.
and the things that I think are the big ones are the liability and the license to use city property.
and those are already processed
There
that
already
exist,
processes each
so
that exists.
they can just do that.
Yep.
Okay,
I just had a
sure.
Since we have mayor's assistant on the phone, on the call.
I don't know if she's prepared. to
I don't know
talk.
if she's
Yeah.
prepared to answer the questions, but my understanding was she had a role with the licensing board
Mhm.
and that could have some insight into licensing. And there may be some ideas, and I don't know if that makes any sense to pursue that at this time, so we could have an understanding.
Lindsay, are you prepared to
Or
comment tonight, or,
as a municipal official.
yeah, as a municipal official, or are we blindsiding you?
Well, yeah, you're blindsiding me, but I'm happy to offer comment to whatever extent I can on things.
I'm sorry, this is-
So
Could you speak up again?
Sorry, there's an audio issue. Oh, it's muted.
Oh, well, that'll do it.
Um,
how about now?
no, it's the TV's muted is the problem. Can you try again, Lindsay?
Can you hear me now?
Not really.
We can hear.
We can hear I will summarize what she says. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Lindsay.
Okay, so I wasn't prepared to make comment, but I'm happy to answer any questions that I might be able to.
Does the licensing process to utilize city property exist today?
Not that I'm aware of, and it doesn't exist on the licensing board side, but
Oh, okay.
Well, yeah, but if you were to,
it's just not that I'm aware of.
Right,
Okay.
exactly. Okay.
if somebody wanted to come in tomorrow to discuss this, do you have a point person you'd recommend them coming to? Would it be you or the city clerk or
Me.
you? Okay, so,
Yeah, I'm happy to sit down and talk through it. I'll have to check in with the mayor and see what the process that she discussed with the city solicitor is, and then I'm happy to walk people through it.
You want to summarize that?
okay, so to summarize, Lindsay is recommending that if anyone wants to reach out to directly handle this with the city, that they reach out to her directly. So, and that she will, in the meantime, be in touch with the mayor and the city solicitor to better understand the parameters of what they are looking for. In the meantime, I'm going to send out an email tonight and set up a time for us to meet directly with the mayor and the solicitor, and ideally, at least one or two representatives from the pond committee to sort of go over next steps. But just to make this, I've said this like 5 times now, but I wanted to say it again. We are going to do that because we want to seek a long-term resolution, but we are not holding up anybody from reaching out to the city and getting a temporary resolution to this matter. So that's the best that we can do right now, but we, yeah, I'll put out something as soon as we can get a meeting on the books with everyone involved, because we can't do this like telephone thing anymore. Is there anything?
I was wondering if we could shoot for Monday at 5:45 or 6 o'clock. Since we know the pond committee is at least available, and maybe then we have to check with the city solicitor, see if there's availability or.
Yeah, I mean, I just need to see what, yeah, I'm open to that. I just want to see what the solicitor's availability is. That's the person that I need to see the most, and I don't know what is scheduled.
So stay tuned and you post it then. Should be city solicitor.
Yes, I
And
will
it looks
send,
like it might be that day. Okay.
I'm gonna walk home and I'm gonna send an email.
Can't ask for more than that.
I could do it on my phone, I guess, but there'd probably be a bunch of typos.
Do you want me to drive you home? You get there quicker.
Yes, I don't think it's gonna matter too much, and I could honestly use the steps, so. let's, okay, is there anything else that we need to talk about right now? No? Okay, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a
I
second.
had to think about that for a minute, just to be sure. I think
Okay.
we're good, yeah.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for your patience.
This government meeting is brought to you by Eastworks and our local cable subscribers.